Over the last 6 months or so, I've spent a ton of time really considering where I wanted to take my business. And ultimately what I've landed on is a more productized service, which is essentially monthly websites for a couple of different niche focused industries. A key component to making this successful though is that my business has to be incredibly automated, processes have to be super dialed in, and I need to not be spending time on things that I do right now, which is just a complete waste of time, like cloning sites in Cloudways, creating Basecamp messages to clients, sending emails that are just the same repetitive thing over and over and over. So I've set out to automate as much of that stuff as possible, and I'm really happy with where my automation sits right now. So what I want to do is show you my Zapier automation, which is currently 19 different steps that do all kinds of different things. I'm going to walk you through the Zapier flow in the back end, and then I'll actually show you how it all works, how everything kind of connects together, and you can see it in the flesh and blood. So here we are in the back end of my Zapier automation. So there's a ton of stuff here, and I'm going to go relatively quickly through here, but try to share with you kind of the relevant need to know information. So first of all, everything from now on for me is going to live in Thrivecart. One of the main reasons is because Thrivecart handles so many different things, and you can also have almost like different profiles inside of it. So for me, I'm going to have kind of my agency profile and also my permaslug profile for the courses, for things like, Generate Press and the kind of legacy oxygen courses and whatever else I come up with in the future. So this is going to handle the subscriptions. It will handle the client's billing information. They can download PDF invoices. They'll get payment reminders. It'll automatically shut things off if they stop paying, that kind of thing. So then the next one is really simple. I use MailChimp just kind of out of comfort. I've kind of used it for a really long time. It does all that I need to. I don't really need anything crazy with my email marketing. I just want to be able to put clients into an email list, tag them appropriately, and this does that perfectly fine. So next up, we're going to create a project in Basecamp. So I have used Basecamp for a long time. I really like the simplicity of it, but it's gotten better and better over the last 6 months to a year, just with a little bit more flexibility. So everything that we do lives inside of Basecamp, and we also bring clients into our Basecamp every single time. The reason why is because clients don't really have to interact inside of Basecamp. We use Basecamp internally to kind of organize everything in threaded message boards. We have a project-specific chat and that kind of thing. So for us, it really just makes sense to send the notifications to the client, and to them, it just looks like an email that happens to have the word Basecamp in the bottom, but they can reply directly to the email. So they don't actually even need to log into Basecamp, which is fantastic. So then what I had to do is create a little bit of a delay here. So when the Zapier automation kicks off the project creation, it's actually happening from a template in Basecamp, which takes like 10 or 15 seconds. So nothing crazy. But if I don't have this delay here, which I set to 1 minute, then in the next step, when I find the actual Basecamp project URL, it'll fail because it's happening too soon. So I had to add in a little bit of a delay here. All this step is doing is, like I said, finding the ID of that project and finding its shareable, kind of like, I won't call it public because it's not public, but its URL essentially. The next thing we're going to do is create a Google Drive folder, and what this does is automatically name the folder the business name, and then it's going to stick it in our team kind of client drive. And then it's going to change the permissions on that folder so that it allows the client to, upload folders so they have edit privileges on that automatically. Next up, what it's going to do is create a message board thread inside of Basecamp. And if you're not familiar with Basecamp, I'll show you what it looks like in a little bit so you can see what these message board threads look like. So in this message board thread, I'm going to show you the contents of this. So essentially what's going to happen here is it's going to create a message board thread with the subject line of onboarding form and action required. And then the contents of this is going to pull in a ton of different information. So it's going to automatically pull in the customer's first name and address them, hey, first name. Then it's going to say, to get started on your site, we need you to click this onboarding form. And what I've done here is build a link to our onboarding form, which is Gravity Forms, and then just added some URL parameters. So email equals the customer's email. And of course, that's going to automatically pop in. Then their first name, last name, so that populates in the Gravity Form fields. Business name, the purchase plan, the Google Drive shareable link, because we already have that, the Basecamp URL, as I've mentioned, and then the Basecamp project ID. So then when they click that link, all those query parameters are going to be stored in the Gravity form and fill in a couple of the form fields for them. So they're not annoyed that they just checked out in Thrivecart and again, they're having to enter their information again in Gravity forms. I think it's just a small thing that will definitely kind of, maybe add a little bit of wow factor too. So next up, very similar idea. We're going to create another message board thread and add the Google Drive folder. So this is kind of like step 2. This is the first step for the client, is to complete this onboarding form. Step 2 is going to be for them to upload some content to Google Drive. So it's really, really similar in principle. More dynamic data. So it's going to pull in their first name, say, hey, we're ready for you to upload the Google Drive folder. It's got some suggestions here of things to drop into that folder. It's again going to add in the shareable link to that folder. And then that's it. So it's just a simple email. They can click this link straight from the email. And then as always, if there's any problems, they can simply just reply directly to the email, even though it came from Basecamp, we'll still get it. Then the next one is kind of something I'm not 100% sure on in terms of workflow just yet. I haven't run enough clients through it yet to know if it's going to work well enough, but essentially my idea is that we're going to provide them kind of a few sample sites as jumping off points. So what we're going to do is tell them to pick one of these 3 options, and we kind of describe that we're going to customize the look and feel of the site. And then of course we're going to swap out their brands and colors and images and all that kind of stuff based on the content that they uploaded to their Google Drive folder. So it's sort of like a poke to say like, hey, make sure you've uploaded some good stuff into that folder. And then what we're going to tell them to do is simply reply to the email with which one they like best. Then if they don't like them, hit reply and share a few links to sites they do like. So I want to try to avoid any kind of resistance or artificial barriers to like make somebody go out and find sites. Like, how's a client going to know how to do that? They're going to really struggle with that. I find that most of the time when we send clients sample sites, they're able to pick from 3, and typically always there's an option that they like, or it sparks enough of an idea that they can give us some guidance from there. So that's now 3 Basecamp message threads created. Next up is going to be an internal reminder to us. So this is going to be a little kind of like poke in the butt that just says, hey, you need to add the client to the Basecamp project. Unfortunately, there's not a way to add clients directly to the project because Basecamp has a distinction between people on the project versus clients. So there's not a way to do that. I reached out to Zapier and Basecamp support and they both said no, it's coming. Who knows if it will ever come. So as a temporary workaround, what I've done is just create a very simple email, pretty much plain text, and it just says, hey, go here and add the client into our Basecamp. Here's their information, copy and paste, good to go. Then what's going to happen is there's a second email, and what this is going to do is expect that you've already added the client into the Basecamp account and more or less do the exact same thing. So what it's going to do is grab the onboarding form. So it's going to look up the ID of the project. Then it's going to find the ID of that message board thread. And then I went ahead and appended the client visibility and the edit URL. So that way you can simply click this link, you tick the box that says client editability yes, click save, and you're off to the races. Then the next one is we need to go ahead and send this to the client. Now, because this message board thread already exists, we can use the little notification feature in Basecamp to now push this to the client. So it's the exact same idea. We're going to find the project ID, find that message board thread, go to the notifications area and push it to the client. And I'll show you how we'll do that. Then the other thing I want to be able to do is go ahead and have our team members change the message thread for the Google Drive folder and the pick styles message threads and change those to client visibility true as well. But we're not ready to send those yet because we want them to go ahead and do the onboarding form first before we send them the other stuff. We don't want to overload people too soon. So then moving down to the next step, this is probably my favorite part of the automation. So this is where we're connecting to Cloudways. We're going to clone a staging app, automatically add FTP credentials to it, and then add that information back into Basecamp for us. So there's like API keys and stuff in here that will be pretty difficult for me to kind of chop out. So I'm going to do my best. This may get a little choppy here, but I'm going to click into these so you can kind of see how this works. But again, I'm going to have to remove some of the sensitive information. So I apologize in advance if there's choppy edits coming up. So the first thing that you have to do is authenticate with Cloudways. So Cloudways is going to give you an API key. And what you need to do is hit their endpoint for access token. So you're basically going to provide your user account and your API key. And then what it's going to return is a temporary access token that allows you to manipulate pretty much anything on your account. You can clone apps, you can create new ones, you can change settings. I wanted to change varnish settings, but for some reason I think that API endpoint might be a little bit messed up right now. But nonetheless, you can do a ton of stuff. So what we're going to do is actually clone a staging site on a specific server. So I've just scrolled down a little bit, and what I need to do is provide those two pieces of information in this API call. And what I'm going to do is give it my email, which is of course going to be right here, and then the API key from my Cloudways account, and those go right there. So we need to set the event type as post. The payload type is going to be JSON, and then that's it. That's all you need to do. And what you're going to get returned is that access token. So if I go ahead and move down here to step number 14, you can see it's pretty much the same idea. The URL for the endpoint is different, and then the event is post. Payload type this time is form instead of JSON. And then this is a couple other parameters that I need for this clone API call to work. So what I need to do is tell it the server ID. So this is my development server. And you can get that in Cloudways by simply going to your server and then its settings. And if you look up in the address bar, there'll be a little ID, and that is your server ID. If you go in the backend to a specific app and go to its settings, then you're going to see an ID, and that is the app ID. So what I'm telling it to do is go look at this server and then go look at this app, and that's the one you're going to clone. Then what you're going to do is name it with this information. So we're going to call it staging. Then we're going to put the customer's business name and their product plan that they purchased here. Now the access token is what Cloudways responded in the previous step with, which is what we can use to authenticate and actually make this API call. So you can see this has the number 13 here, and what that means is it's coming from step number 13. So that access token was provided to us. We have to include that in every API call we make from now on, and that access token is good for 60 minutes. So you have plenty of time to do the things that you need to do. So then the next step is we're going to add a delay action. So what's going to happen, of course, here is it's going to clone that app, which generally takes maybe like a minute or two, but I want to make sure that there's enough time between steps 14 and step 16 because, of course, as you can see, step 16 is going to create FTP credentials on that new app that we just cloned. But if there's not enough time, it's not going to be able to run because the app won't yet exist. So I added a delay in here, which is step 15 of 5 minutes. So that's more than enough time. Every time I've run it so far, it's worked just fine. So then it's going to add the FTP credentials onto that app automatically. So as you can see here, what we're going to do is hit this endpoint. The event type is post, payload type is JSON. And then what's happening here is, of course, just more data that you have to give it. So again, looking at the correct server, the app ID is coming from step 14, which is the new app that was cloned from the one that you provided via the API before. Then the username, you can give this whatever username you want for your FTP account. And then your password can be whatever you want. Any variation of letters and numbers, dynamic data, whatever you want to put can go in there. And then again, of course, you need to provide the access token like I mentioned. And so that's about it for the Cloudways portion. So after that step is done, by the time 16 has completed, you're going to have cloned a new app. It's going to have created FTP credentials. And then now we're going to create another thread with that information inside of Basecamp. So in step number 17 here, what we're going to do is create another message board thread, which is a little bit preemptive, but the idea here is that we're going to have a thread ready to go for when we're ready to send that proof to the client, which should be really quick. Hopefully no more than like 10 days to 2 weeks is what I'm shooting for. So we'll see if we can pull that off. So of course it's got some canned, information here. I tried to make it sound like it really would be me. This is something I would actually say. I would say we're super excited to share this with you because of course we generally are. And then what I'm doing here is saying you can view the staging website by clicking this link, and it's just a simple A link. So the way that these staging links in Cloudways are created is you have WordPress dash, then this is the server ID, which of course you've already seen, and then the app ID is followed by that. So this is what was provided to us by Cloudways. This is the new app that was cloned. And so I've just stuck that in there with the Zapier dynamic data, and then done.cloudwaysapps.com, target equals blank, and then that's my A link. So now that's just going to work. When I send this the email, they're going to be taken straight to that staging site, and I don't even have to go look for the URL anymore. Then I'm going to provide them some simple next steps, just a couple of bullet point notes here. Then what I'm going to do is more or less the same thing from before, send our team an internal email. And what we're going to do is just basically say, make sure you go set that client proof message to client visible, and then go send it to the client as well. And I'm glad I looked at this because I just realized I need to get rid of that little bit and make sure that the dynamic data is proper. But like I've already said, I've recorded this multiple times now because I just kept finding problems, and I'm like 99% sure that everything should go smoothly. So I'll fix that and then we'll run everything. And then last but not least, what I'm going to do is create an internal message thread for ourselves only. No client needs to see this, but what this is going to be is just a very simple reference for us to be able to get to this staging site. We're going to have the WP admin URL, which of course is exactly the same with just WP admin appended to it. Then we're going to have the server, IP, port number, FTP username and password, and then that way it's just there in Basecamp ready for us without having to go anywhere else. So that is more or less the end of the automation. So what I want to do now is actually go run through this. So we're going to go do a test checkout in Thrivecart, and we're going to see how all this other stuff happens in succession. Okay, so here we are in the Thrivecart checkout page for the products. So again, forgive me, there's gonna be probably some jump cuts here just because of the way that I need to blur out different things. But basically what I'm going to do is walk you through this process. So we'll use this test cart information. So I'm just gonna make up an email here. We'll just use my name for first and last name and business name. Let's just call this Permaslug Videos. Okay, and then I can do a quick test card checkout. We'll click on complete order. And now the automation is kicked off. Everything that we just looked at is now taking place because we've made it to this success page here in Thrivecart. So I tried to make this as simple as possible. It could probably do with being a little bit more simple. But essentially the idea here is that just telling them to pay attention to their email. You don't have to actually get into Basecamp and pay attention for your next email, which is going to be onboarding form. So now we're waiting on this 1 minute delay to complete here in step 4, because step 5 and beyond have so many different things that are reliant on a lot of the information we're going to pull out of that new Basecamp project. So what I'm going to do here in just a second is switch over to Basecamp. We're going to see that new project. We'll click inside of it and we're going to see a lot of the stuff here already ready to go. So if I come over here and click on home, I'm just going to refresh real quick, and there is Permaslug Videos down here. So if I click on this, look, there's already 3 of our message board threads good to go. So let's go ahead and take a look. Well, actually, before we do that, let's see where our Zap run is, because we might be at the point where Cloudways is creating our app. Refreshing this real quick. Sometimes Cloudways refresh takes forever. Look, there it is, cloning application. It is in progress. Isn't that so cool? It blew my mind when I figured this out. I was like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. So by the time we come back to this, what's gonna have happened is it'll create the app, add the credentials, and then there'll be more information that it pops into Basecamp in just a little bit. Remember, that was about a 5-minute delay, so this could take about 7 minutes. So let's switch back over here to Basecamp. So we have these forms. Now, of course, these 3 are going to get emailed to us to change the client editability. A couple other things on that I'll have to show you, but I wanted to click into this real quick. So you can see here is the onboarding form email that the client is going to get. And when they click on this link, there's a number of query parameters that are going to be dropped into Gravity Forms automatically. Now, my email had a little plus there, but no client is ever going to put a plus. So, you kind of get the idea. It's going to drop in their first and last name, business name, and their email automatically, which is awesome because, of course, if they're, they may get a little bit frustrated about having to do the same thing twice. So this just saves them a little bit of time. And like I already said, maybe there'll be a little bit of like, whoa, how'd you do that kind of thing? So then they're going to finish this form, and the regular emails from Gravity Forms are going to come through. They'll get a copy, we'll get a copy, that kind of thing. So let me switch over to my email with the notifications that me and my team are going to get. So the first one here is the email that says, hey, make sure you add this client into Basecamp so we can invite them to the project. So this just has a simple link that we're going to click. It's going to take us to the client account screen. And my thought process here is we can just simply, pop this person's name in. We'll just copy their email address like that. And then their company name is going to be, just Permaslug like that. So then we'll email them the invitation. Again, they don't have to accept it, which is so awesome. And then I'll set them on that project. Okay, so now I have the client added to the project, as you can see right here. And so what I can do is in this email, I'm gonna go back to the second one now. And these are the links to the message board threads inside of that Basecamp project. So when I click this, it's gonna take me to the onboarding form and take me to the client editability screen. So if I click this, there we go. So Permaslug Videos, message board, onboarding form. Now all I have to do is click on allow client to see this and say yes. And then I could either do one of 2 things. I can just come right here and say send this to someone, or I could really come back here and say and send this to client. Now I can just click on myself, send it their way. And then I'll show you what that looks like on the client side from there. Then whenever they respond to this, the comments and the responses are all just gonna pop in there, whether it's from us or from the client, which is awesome. The exact same thing is true if I come down here to our Google Drive folder. So this is the next message board thread. I'm gonna say allow client to see this. And then here we go. So this is going to take us to that Google Drive folder just by simply clicking this link. How cool is that? Oh, it's so awesome. And then lastly, the pick styles, we would just do the exact same thing. As far as I'm aware at this point, there's not really a way to automatically change the visibility of these items through Zapier or Basecamp. This is far, far better than what I have right now though, so I'm totally okay with that. Here in just a little bit though, we should have another message board thread with our credentials from the Cloudways side of things, and then also the proofing message that we're gonna have. So in total, there should be about 5 message board threads. So there it is right here. So your website proof is ready. So of course, again, this is a little bit preemptive, but our website proof. So clicking this link is going to take us to the Cloudways app that was just created. Oh my God, it's just so cool. And then coming back over here to the staging site credentials, then you can see there is all the information there. Now there should be one more email for me if I come back here. So here is the message for me to set the proof to client editable. So we're gonna say allow, and then of course I'd be able to send this directly to the client. Now of course I have a million tabs open, so I'm gonna clean up some of this stuff. So this is what it looks like for the client whenever they are receiving emails from Basecamp. So there's really only a small notification that it's coming from Basecamp. Of course, there's a little message down here, but it's so nondescript. No client ever has any problems with this. We've done this for years now. But what they can do is simply click this link to the onboarding form. It works perfectly fine. They don't have to, even log into Basecamp. They can reply directly to this. It's just, it's so awesome and so clean. Now, the last thing I wanted to do is go to that app in Cloudways and let's double check that it created FTP credentials for us. Here is our Permaslug videos site, and it did not create the credentials. It said something about, I got an email that said the Zap went wrong for something to do with password policy. I may not have set the password to be, proper characters and stuff. So that's no big deal. If that's the worst part of my automation that doesn't work, I don't mind, because so much of that other stuff is just so powerful and so time saving. Specifically, this cloning of the actual app is tremendous. I just really am so stoked on this. So this video has gone on way, way longer than I thought, but hopefully this inspires you to do some level of automation in your business. It goes without saying that this stuff, it just evolves. It takes a lot of time. I've spent hours on this. It's like that classic, meme that says something to the effect of, why do it in 20 minutes when you can automate it in 2 hours? It's the exact same idea, but the thing is, this will save me time in the long run, and it just makes us look so professional, makes our lives easier. And of course, I really enjoy doing this kind of thing. Making these automations has been super fun, and I know there's more to come on that. So let me know what your level of automation is. Has this inspired you? Are you going to be doing something cool with this? If so, drop a message in the comments below, and I'll definitely take the time to read it and get back to you. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in a future video.